All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the Broest Bros. You knows, we are your BFF of the internet, and we are here to impart our knowledge on you about truth, justice, and the Bromerican way. I'm your host, Viet, and I'd like to take a moment to talk about our sponsor, DC Dog Runner. Guys, the name says it all. This is a dog running service. They do their business in DC, Maryland, and Virginia. And right now, if you mention promo code BBYK, you'll get a free consultation and a complimentary run. I'll be putting a link in the description below. Check them out. DC Dog Runner. Gotta run. You know, we're going to start doing a new thing here on BBYK. You know, I get a sense that people are a little disgruntled here these days. You look at the government, you're just like, man, why are things moving so slow? Because we're in a bureaucracy. Well, here at BBYK, we recommend a bureaucracy. That's right, guys. Summer is coming. And with that, day drinking. So we're going to start giving you a list of beers that we recommend. This is the BBYK, BBWK, the Bros beers we know. This week, our recommendation is the Shiner Ruby Redbird. This light, crisp beer has just the right hint of grapefruit. It is perfect for those summers where you just need to cool off while you're playing cornhole. Pick it up, Shiner Ruby Redbird, and remember, enjoy responsibly. We're going to talk about a couple things in our show today. First up, we're going to be talking about the Ali Act. Next, we're going to talk about the banning and unbanning of Ariel Helwani. Moving on, guys, don't know if you've heard, Brock Lesnar's back. I'm going to talk about that. After that, we're going to do a brief recap of UFC 199. And then we're going to move on to the main event of this episode, where we talk about the UFC Fight Night 89 in Ottawa's co-main event of Donald Cerrone versus Patrick Cote and Rory MacDonald versus Stephen Thompson. So excited about this that I had to bring on two fight experts with me. I got David BC Bridges. What's up, David?
What's up, Viet? How you doing, man?
I'm doing all right, buddy. And I also have a good friend of mine, also happens to be Canadian. We got Tyler Burrito Dolinger. What's up, Tyler?
What's going on, bros?
Man, it's good to have you on the show.
Thank you.
All right, let's get right into it, guys. The Ali Act. And before we get into this, just a quick note, rest in peace to the legendary boxer Muhammad Ali, which this act was named after. Cool note, but in a future episode, we're actually going to have former UFC fighter Kung Lee come on to talk about his part in the Ali Act. Stay tuned. We got that coming up. And in the meantime, I'm going to give you guys a link in the description below to a response that he and Randy Couture wrote talking about the Ali Act. I would highly recommend it for fight fans in general. These guys know what's up. David, how do you feel about the Ali Act? Do you think that you can just blank take something that was built from the ground up for boxing and just put it in MMA context?
I mean, like you said, it was built from the ground up for boxing specifically. And what was it, 16 years ago, I think, when I guess it was first enacted. I think there are two different sports, but there are a lot of similarities between MMA and boxing. But in boxing, you had several different promotions. Just watch a fight. Guys will walk into it with 4 or 5 different belts, all from the same weight class, just different promotions. In MMA, yes, you do have different promotions, but fighters fight under one promotion. It's more like it's more of a league than a promotion, I guess you could say. It's the UFC, it's Bellator, it's World Series of Fighting, if you actually want to call that a league.
What do you think, Tyler?
I think in the current era where you have to take fighter health and safety above all else, especially now with the amount of money wrapped up in these guys and the amount of money wrapped up in the promotion, I think any step forward in making their lives better is probably a good thing. It's not going to go over that easy to start with, but nothing ever does. So I'm with it.
Yeah, just a side note, but the UFC, they're bringing their big guns. They actually hired a firm here in DC to promote their side.
Educate.
Educate, that's right. Educate the masses, that's right. Spoken like a lobbyist, David. Just in terms of the laws of equity, you look at something like this, and these are steps in the right direction.
Right.
We would like more transparency. We would like to see what cut the promotion gets. What are these fighters actually getting? You know, there's a way to look at this, and not just from an emotional standpoint where we want to protect the fighters. I think that's something that you can get caught up in. I'd like to also look at the argument in a way where you can present to the UFC that this is financially good for you guys. This makes sense because the better you take care of your fighters, the more money that they see, it will attract better talent. And better talent at the organization, the more money down the line. So I think there's an argument to be made that maybe not this, but something like this can potentially be beneficial for both the fighter and the promotion. Moving on, we're just gonna keep putting the UFC on blast for a little bit. Ariel Helwani, the banning and unbanning. This is your countryman, Tyler. Ariel Helwani. What was up there? How did you feel about that entire situation? It was really crazy, right? He got banned from UFC 199 right before the main event of Michael Bisping versus Luke Rockhold happened. He was escorted out of the building, told he was banned for life. He had his MMA hour where he explained his side of the story. 48 hours later,
48.
Boom, ban lifted. What do you make of this, Tyler?
So, I guess full disclosure, I've been a fan of Ariel Helwani for quite a long time because he's always been kind of the most, I want to say respected. I don't know if that's maybe the right term, like in his earlier days, but like if Ariel Helwani wrote something in an article, like that's the way it was. Like you didn't have to think that he was just pulling straws, right? So, and with everything that he's done in his career to continue to elevate himself and maintain that level of journalistic integrity, even he said it on the MMA Hour that like he's doing water cooler talk, right? He said, I'm not covering the big news, I'm covering MMA, right? And that may not seem like a big deal to a lot of people, but he does such a good job in his role. And then to have a very hot-headed UFC Zuffa brand decide that they were upset that he scooped the news that Brock Lesnar was coming back was just so silly in and of itself. To pull him out of the arena before the main event, to kind of let it get out there that they were not. So Ariel Helwani uses his Twitter and his MMA Hour show to kind of discuss what happened. And UFC's outlet to discuss their side of the story was TMZ. I mean, that tells you a lot in that confrontation. I'm surprised they reinstated his credentials as quickly as they did.
I think they just realized how bad of a PR move it was really quickly and just wanted to not have that be a lingering talking point. We've had stuff like this happen, like John Snowden, Sherdog back in the day. We've had people banned by the UFC before. This just seems to be like the first time where the media, they seem to kind of stand up for Ariel.
It was really funny because Ariel, his first, I think he mentioned it in his MMA Hour this week. His first time on SportsCenter was they called him into SportsCenter to talk about his ban. Like ESPN was picking it up, and that's huge.
Yeah, and at this point, Helwani, he has no skin in the UFC game, right? Like he's independent of UFC and of Fox Sports now, and I think that's the kind of person you want to attract to your promotion. A name like Ariel Helwani with the contacts he has, I think, and I'm probably totally off base, but I would imagine Helwani is more connected than Dana White in the MMA world.
I wouldn't go that far that he's more connected, but he definitely has his ear to the ground. He definitely has a connection. I'm just going to put in there real quick. You were talking about how he's not being paid by the UFC, and that's certainly true. But I thought it was funny because he had Chael Sonnen on his show, and during the interview, Chael Sonnen was kind of making fun of the UFC/Fox. Like he was saying, I don't know where my paycheck's coming from. Am I getting paid by the UFC or Fox? And he was joking about it. and he was talking with Ariel in the context of, oh, you work for Fox. And it was funny because Ariel was saying, oh, that was a nice burn, Chael. And Chael thought that Ariel meant nice burn on the UFC, but Ariel, of course, was talking about the fact that he no longer works for Fox because they let him go. And Chael just kept going with the bit. And it's like, wow, you're laughing at the guy that got let go from his job. Go Chael.
He's a bad boy.
We all know Ariel Helwani, but on to the next guy. Brock Lesnar's back, and in his interview, he says he didn't know who Ariel was. Guys, how do you feel about Brock Lesnar being back? David, I'm going to start with you on this.
All right, so I for one, am actually very, very excited to have Brock back. I know he's obviously not the greatest, MMA fighter of all time or anything like that, but he's just fun to watch. He's a star, and he brings a lot of crossover fans. I mean, a lot of fans found the sport of MMA when Brock first came to the UFC. He's a big name. He sells massively on his pay-per-views. And just having a name like that in the sport, that's huge. I mean, it's great. It's fun for the fans. And, knock on wood here, this is no, Shamrock versus Gracie fight.
Mark Hunt's the other guy in that fight, so it's not going to be like that. Tyler, how do you feel about it? You happy Brock's back?
Fighting out of Regina, Saskatchewan, Canada.
I have to tell you, it does sound like you're saying vagina.
100%, man.
That's why nobody wants to really be from Regina, Saskatchewan. But Brock Lesnar also has a controversial tattoo that goes right up to his neck. So I don't think he cares about anyone.
That's true. Well, when you're a large man like Brock Lesnar is,
I'm never going to tell Brock Lesnar that I think anything about his tattoo. I think either if I went into that conversation, it would end bad for me, one way or the other. So
that's like that reinforcement he gets though, because everyone makes fun of it behind his back, and then it's like, hey, so what do you think about my tattoo? Oh, that's sweet sword, bro. That's really badass.
The meaning of the knife against your throat, it just really speaks to me.
So you're happy Brock's back?
I was totally a fan of Brock Lesnar and began his MMA journey. I was happy to see him in the UFC. I knew that basically wanted that. I think he took 2 fights prior to the UFC. Came in, got heel hooked, looked good in the process, went out, fought against a guy from Texas whose name I can't remember, because he basically retired that guy in that fight. Obviously, he fought internal stomach diverticulitis problems. That's what originally took him out of the game. Glad to see him back. I hope it's a good fight. Really don't know how it's going to go. Pulling for my Canadian buddy there, but we'll see. We'll see. It'll be a good fight. Mark Hunt is definitely no tomato can.
One hitter quitter.
He's actually the current favorite in that fight. So as we get closer to UFC 200, we'll start breaking some of those fights. We're actually going to break down that UFC 200 card into multiple episodes because there's just so many great fights on there that we want to get to. It's just too much to put into one episode. Brock Lesnar coming back is actually the breaking story that started the entire Ariel Helwani banning thing. It's great that he's back. Really excited about it. With a name like Brock, you know that guy's a bro. So we're cool with Brock. Next, we're just do a really, really brief recap of UFC 199. What an awesome card.
Hendo!
Congrats to Poirier, to Hendo, to the Hawaiian, hashtag UFC in Hawaii.
Blessed.
Really great fights. Then to the 2 guys that fought in the co-main events for the belts. Dominic Cruz, this was one of the best Dominic Cruzes we've ever seen. He really does get better every single time we see him in the cage. Uriah looked game in that first round, but it seemed like as soon as Cruz really picked up on Uriah's game and really got a feel for it, it just all came down really fast. Uriah was just not in that fight for the last 4 rounds. And then, hashtag and new middleweight champion of the world, Michael Bisping. Crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah.
We're in a Bisping world now. I'm going to throw out a question to you guys, but where do you rank that personally on the list of biggest upsets in UFC history?
Oh. So you have Bisping over Rockhold. You have Dillashaw over Burrito, which in hindsight doesn't seem like that big of an upset, but at the time it was. Sarah over GSP. Those are probably my top 3 right there.
You have to throw
Holly
Holm
Holm
over Ronda
yeah.
Rousey. Fantastic pair of co-main event fights. For Cruz, to me, to take away, there's a lot of stuff that he's doing, and it's really hard to pinpoint what he's improving on because it's just hard to pinpoint what it is he's doing exactly. He's just next level. Everything he does, it seems like he's 2 or 3 steps ahead of his opponent. And a couple things, or the one thing I will point out, it looks like he's starting to get just really, really deadly at winning the exchanges off the break. You would see him and Faber getting close and off the clinch. He would just throw these really, really accurate shots. He's able to get around the gloves and just hit you in your weak areas and just put some damage on you. You know, we've talked about how Cruz doesn't necessarily have that one-hit knockout power, but man, he can really accumulate some damage over the course of a fight. Michael Bisping, you know, we said this in our last podcast, you got to go with more than 2 strikes at a time, 3 strikes. You know, it's really funny. I was watching this fight with my wife, and my wife saw Luke Rockhold come out, and she was like, he kind of looks like an arrogant prick. And I was like, yeah. And she said, he's going to get knocked out. And I think my wife needs to start betting on fights.
That's funny, because I'm pretty sure my wife would leave me for Luke Rockhold.
She can't leave the burrito.
Is that what she calls it?
Oh wow, man. They've always taken it there. Guys, there are a couple rumors about who Bisping's next opponent is. I think if we give it to the person that is most deserving, it should be Jacare. If Bisping takes a little time off, then Yoel Romero is then in that mix when his suspension is lifted. A couple really fun names. The first one, Hendo, has been linked. Bisping says he'd like to run that one back. Everyone remembers the infamous UFC 100 punch heard around the world. Hendo, that was actually his logo. Him smashing Bisping in the face was actually the Hendo logo. So you know Bisping would love to run that one back. And there's absolutely no way Hendo says no to that fight. The other one, a potential fight for the middleweight belt with George St. Pierre. Faraz has said that those guys are totally cool about it. They both have 19 wins, so they'd be fighting for 20. They'd be fighting for the belt. What do you guys think about that?
I love it. I mean, they're the only 2 fighters in the UFC with 19 wins each. Not only fighting for the belt, you're fighting for number 20. It's the return of GSP. It's just, I mean, the UFC would not even have to like run any commercials for that. Like that shit just pays for itself, and people just would tune in. I would absolutely 100% love that. It'd be so much fun.
You put it in any stadium in Canada, that thing's just going to be sold out within the first 30 seconds of it going online. Todd, I'm not even going to ask you. I know you love it. I know you'd love George St. Pierre coming back.
Wrong. I love George St. Pierre, and I hope they don't show up at my door to kick me out of the country for saying this, but I would not really enjoy St. Pierre's first fight back immediately being for the belt.
A tune-up one in first?
I think so, yeah. I don't know. Maybe it's just my own odd, like, sense of how fighters should be. Maybe that's wrong, whatever, but I wouldn't really think that would be a great call, putting GSP right up into the championship mix that quickly, especially when there's just absolutely no idea about what he's capable of. I mean, yeah, you can sell a fight based on the names of the fighters, and that's all well and good, but that has not really turned out to be the best strategy for the UFC.
Is that more a concern on his abilities at this point, or is that more of a concern on your part about the merit of him getting a title shot?
For me, it's both. I would say that to anyone who is coming off of, 4 years? How long's he been out now?
See, I would love it. I'm a huge fan of George St. Pierre. I actually think that fight makes a lot of sense just because of the stakes. And I also think Bisping's, that's the level of fight for George St. Pierre. There's not too many guys that you can throw him in at 170. There are a bunch of killers in that division. You know, there's a bunch of guys that could just straight up murder. If George St. Pierre is coming back and it's a diminished George St. Pierre, as you're implying, that would really do some damage, and that could really hurt his stock too, fighting, you know, one of these young guys that's not as highly ranked. You know, he goes in there against a middleweight. He's got that out. He was going up in weight. He was going for the belt, and there's a little bit of grace in that. I think that's the kind of fight that makes sense for George St. Pierre. It's the kind of fight he wants. He doesn't want to go back against one of these young bucks that's lower ranked or whatever and potentially lose and diminish his name a bit, especially since when he exited the game, he was the pound for pound best on the planet, considered by many the best ever. I don't know. That fight makes sense to me, but I could see your point too. George St. Pierre he's a national treasure up there, so I know you want to take good care of that guy.
Yeah, and somebody's probably going to show up at my workplace tomorrow and hurt me for saying that.
Well, and folks, this will be the last episode that Tyler will be on, Broest Bros.
It was great knowing him.
It was great knowing him.
We appreciate his contribution.
Moving on to the main event of this podcast, UFC Fight Night 89 in Ottawa. We're going to be talking about the co-main events. We got Donald Cowboy Cerrone versus Patrick the Predator Cote. Let me start with Donald Cerrone. Guy fights over there at Jackson Wink MMA. This guy is a black belt in Gai Jiu-Jitsu. I'm going to ask David real quick. Can you explain to our listeners out there, what is Gai Jiu-Jitsu?
What is what?
Gai Jiu-Jitsu.
I don't know.
I think most people, when they hear that they're like, what? That's not a real thing. If you think it's not a real thing, it's because it's not a real thing. Gai Jiu-Jitsu is what they call MMA down in Jackson. You might as well call it Greg Jitsu. It's a form of MMA that he invented himself. Not similar to what Faraz does with TriStar, but similar philosophy in that you have a martial art that's built from the ground up for MMA. So it incorporates grappling, it incorporates Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, it incorporates striking and clinching. That's what that is. And Donald Cerrone is a black belt. He's a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Guys, we had Steve Garcia on our show. He also is a teammate of Donald Cerrone at Jackson Wink MMA, and he says this guy is as advertised. This is one of the Broest Bros we know. Skydiving, snowboarding. I think Steve was telling me that a lot of the rules that they implement in the UFC of what you can't do when you're outside of training camp, that list gets extended every single time Donald does something. And that guy basically is the reason why that list is there. He has the most bonuses in UFC WC history at 16. He is currently the 36th ranked welterweight in the world. David.
Yes.
I know you love Donald Cerrone. Tell
Cowboy.
me a little bit about this guy.
All right. I mean, so Donald, like you said, I mean, most bonuses in WC UFC history. He is, however, a notoriously slow starter in his fights. I mean, it seems to happen every single time out. He has to get punched in the head a couple times before he wakes up and he realizes he's in the cage or something like that. So yeah, he's easy to get hit early on in his fights. You know, he's trying to find his range and people tag him. But once he gets going, I mean, the guy's just a machine. Loves those leg kicks. He does a good job throwing a combo and then angling out and finishing off with a kick. I mean, his kicks are some vicious things. However, I mean, he is vulnerable when he doesn't have that space to operate. He likes that Muay Thai range. So he likes to fight from the middle of the octagon. But if you back him up against the cage, he's not as comfortable back there. On the ground, I mean, you could argue that he might even be better on the ground than he is on his feet. He does a great job scrambling, and he's very opportunistic with his submissions. I mean, he hurts someone on the feet, they go down, and he jumps down, scrambles, and gets on their back and chokes them out. Actually, I think most of his submissions come from scrambles, and so I'm not sure. You know, I don't think I've ever actually seen him, you know, in guard, step-by-step submission. Seems to always be from a scramble, but he is very opportunistic at it, and when he sees his opening, he takes it.
He was like that in his last fight, Oliveira.
Yeah.
He took him
Oh,
down.
that's right.
It wasn't
That's
off
right.
the scramble.
That's right. That is true. I forgot about that. But for the most part, it's from a scramble, and but yeah, I mean, the guy on his feet is vicious. I mean, he throws some mean kicks, leg, body, head, and he is fun to watch.
And Tyler, we were talking a little bit earlier before the show. Donald Cerrone was the reason why you started watching the WEC. You're a really big fan of this guy too.
Yeah, Cerrone's style and speed and ability in the cage has always been, I don't want to say second to none, but it is incredible to watch. Cerrone and Benson Henderson back in WEC, Faber back in WEC, I mean, those guys were just, when you would watch them and you even compared them against the UFC guys, watching WEC back then was so much more fun because the big guys were just so fast, and they were out there just fighting to prove themselves and just going hard. And give Cerrone credit. He's gotten a little older, obviously, because, time doesn't slow down for anyone, but I've never seen Cerrone give up on the way he fights. The guy is always just full speed there. Like if Zuffa's calling and they're saying, "Hey man, you want to go in 2 weeks?" Like they already know the answer, right? They can cut the promo material. He's ready to go, and that ability and willingness to just get in there and get at it, that makes him a scary fighter, man.
Yeah, he's just he said it himself, he's just an adrenaline junkie. I'm sure the UFC has appreciated how he's been able to step in short notice and save cards over and over again. He's one of those guys, as popular as he is, I've always felt like he should be a little bit more popular. I mean, he's very charismatic. The guy's just like so supremely alpha. He's just one of those guys, supremely confident and just kind of has that swagger about him. You go to the Team Alpha Male gym, and their logo is actually Donald Cerrone's face. So he is definitely a fun fighter. On the other side, we got Patrick, the Predator Cote. This guy is fighting out of Brazilian top team in Brazilian top team in Canada. He trains under Fabio Holanda. He's got a black belt in Muay Thai, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and Judo. This guy is a complete martial artist. He's been in the game for a bit. He's got a pro record of 23-9. His first stint in the UFC, not so great. Went 4-7, got released after a 2010 loss to Tom Lawler. He fought in indie promos after that. In 2012, he actually replaced Rich Franklin in a fight against Kung Lee that he ended up losing in a unanimous decision. Since then, he's gone 6-1. His only loss is to the guy that's going to be fighting in the main event, Stephen Thompson. Guy's coming off of a 3-fight win streak. This seems like a rejuvenated Patrick Cote. Tyler, I'm going to let you talk about your fellow countryman real quick. Patrick Cote, tell us a little bit about this game.
I think you talked about his second stint in the UFC, and more what you see from him is the ability to continue to take the fight the distance. If you look over his career, the guy has, win or loss, has gone all 3 rounds more times than he's ever had a knockout or a submission. The guy knows how to fight the whole fight, and he's getting to the point now where he's able to put the things together to get the wins he needs to get, no matter how he gets them. He's coming in super hot, coming off of 2 knockouts in a row. The guy, he's got such a long career, it's hard to pick out any great highlight, I think. But you gotta say that the guy fought Anderson Silva, and it was not the worst fight we've ever seen, especially at a time where Anderson Silva was pretty much unbeatable. It's a good matchup. You take a guy like Cerrone, who can bring a lot of heat and aggression in the cage. You put him up against a guy like Cote, who could care less. Cote is going to fight his fight, and he's going to do his level best to stretch that fight out And if it does get stretched out, the odds are in his favor. I'm pulling for the Canadian in this one.
You're pulling for the Canadian. Big surprise, Tyler. Way to surprise us. David, who do you have winning this fight, and what is their path to victory?
All right, I have Cowboy winning this fight, and honestly, it's one of those things. Like you said, Cote is a very well-rounded fighter. He has decent power. He's kind of good everywhere, good on the ground, good on his feet. But I think that Cerrone has many more paths to victory than Cote does. He's a more athletic fighter, even though he has given up some size to Cote. I mean, I think Cerrone's actually probably taller, but he's more of a natural 155 fighter, not a 170 fighter. But I think that Cerrone will be able to establish the range that he wants and fight his own game. And I see this going maybe 2 rounds. I think that it ends as many as Cerrone's fights has with a vicious kick that drops Cote, and then Cerrone drops down and sinks in the choke. But yeah, it's just one of those things where Cerrone has, I think, more paths to victory than Cote does. He's probably better in most aspects of the fight. So it's his to lose.
And he is the odds-on favorite in this fight. We forgot to mention that earlier. Tyler, I know you're going for Cote. What does this guy need to do to beat a dangerous fighter like Donald Cerrone?
Cote's got to stay in his own head on this one. We talked about it. Cerrone's going to come at him. And Cote has to be smart enough to know when to get into that engagement and when it's time to just bail the heck out of there. I think he is smart enough at this point in his career to judge that. He's coming off of 2 big knockouts, but I see Cote taking this one in a decision because he's going to play the smarter game.
If I were a betting man, I think I'd put it on Cote. He's the underdog in this fight, and there's a lot of reasons to like his chances here. With Donald Cerrone, as great of a fighter as he is, this is my one question mark on him. How much of his success in the UFC is dependent on the fact that he's usually the bigger fighter in most of his fights? He seems to have trouble with some of the bigger opponents that he has. He lost to Hendo twice. He did win that close unanimous decision in their last fight. He's lost to RDA twice. He lost to RDA twice, and those weren't even really close fights. He's lost to Diaz. Some of his victories came against guys that actually dropped weight classes, like Miles Jury. You look at his last fight against Oliveira. Oliveira stepped in short notice. Now, this guy's also another former 55er going up to welterweight, and he was able to really push Donald around, really cracked him a couple times. And the thing that's going to be really different between Oliveira and Cote is Oliveira is very raw. He's really young in terms of MMA years, and Cote's been in the game for a while, has really crisp striking, really good boxing, and Oliveira was really winging a lot of stuff, and he was still able to catch Cerrone and push him back. Whenever you're able to press Cerrone, he doesn't really like that. He likes to be able to have that distance because he's really good at firing off those roundhouses. He has a lot of snap in his kick, but when you pressure him and get into that range, he can't get those off as well. And it was a great time takedown by Donald Cerrone, and it didn't look like Oliveira really put up much resistance. It almost just looked like Donald just jumped straight through his guard, got the full mount, and put in the triangle. But before that, he was backing up, pushed against the cage. I didn't like that. And I felt like that was a bigger guy being able to impose this will on Cerrone, and Cerrone was able to pull off the submission because he was just technically a better fighter than Oliveira that night. I think Cote, former middleweight, that guy's got some old man strength on him. He's going to be able to push Donald back the same way that Oliveira did. Throughout his career, this guy has gotten a lot better. He used to be a stand-and banger, really just wanted to throw hands, and he had knockout power. He's really evolved. He's really learned how to utilize different parts of his game. This is a really smart fighter, and I think at 36, 37, this may be the best Patrick Cote yet. He'll probably have to eat some kicks to get inside, but once there, his boxing will be the difference. And Cote, as a veteran, he always seems like a very relaxed fighter. He doesn't make a lot of mistakes. It seems like Cerrone really likes to capitalize on people when they make mistakes, or put them in situations where he hurts them and they're forced to do certain things and he capitalizes on them. Cote really doesn't do that. You really kind of have to overwhelm him with strength. We've seen Anderson Silva crack him with a head kick, then go in with a flying knee and still not finish him. So Cote's chin is pretty good. I think if I'm a betting man, I'd put it on the underdog there and Patrick Cote. Moving on. Guys, I can't tell you how absolutely excited I am about this fight. These are two of my favorite fighters in the UFC right now, two of the best mixed martial artists on the planet. A rare 1 versus 2 matchup. This is incredible. You got Rory, you guys are going to have to wait for it because this guy, he's kind of like an Apollo Creed. Rory, Aries, Waterboy, the Canadian Psycho, the Red King, MacDonald. This guy trains out of TriStar Gym under Firas Zahabi, has a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. We've talked about him before on this show. This guy is from the ground up a mixed martial artist. Everything about his game is to exploit the game of mixed martial artists. He didn't come in under a single discipline. He's not a wrestler. He's not a Jiu-Jitsu guy. He's not a karate guy. This guy is a mixed martial artist. At 26, he's still young, but he's got a record of 18-3. He's got a little wear on the tires, if you will, even at his young age. David, I know this guy is one of your absolute favorite fighters. I'm going to let you talk about him first, and I'm going to let Tyler talk about him because fellow countryman.
Well, I mean, it's like you said, like ground up mixed martial artist. I mean, if you look up well-rounded in the dictionary, you see a full-page picture of Rory right next to the definition of well-rounded. I mean, the guy is a master in literally every aspect of mixed martial arts. On his feet, MacDonald makes excellent use of his strong jab. I mean, he stays out of range, but continually tags his opponent with his left hand. It really disrupts the timing of his opponent and allows Rory to throw off his other standing strikes. And you could say, like, you know, when the fight's at this range, Rory can be considered a boring fighter sometimes, but he's so very technical on the feet. But once he pushes his opponent up against the cage, that's when he really turns it on. He looks like a killer. I mean, he throws brutal elbows, brutal knees, and just some vicious flurries when he has his opponent up against the cage. And then on the ground, I mean, the guy has, well, first of all, he has, I mean, I can't remember the exact stat, but his takedown success is incredible. He has a vicious top game. I guess it was the Diaz fight several years ago where he just basically ragdolled Diaz for, you know, the entire fight. I mean, the guy is just completely solid everywhere. Like you said, black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, great wrestling, can turn on when he needs to. He's a great fighter.
Yeah, this is Georges St. Pierre's protege. This is supposed to be the next Georges St. Pierre. I believe you described him as that, Tyler. He was supposed to be the next Georges St. Pierre. Tyler, give us your thoughts on Rory.
So, you want to talk about Rory? Let's talk about the losses Rory has had. He lost most recently to Robbie Lawler in the 5th round, and it was given a fight of the night. Before that, he had only lost to Robbie Lawler in a split decision in 3 rounds. And then his only other loss to Carlos Condit, again, round 3 and a fight of the night. So if you can take a man's 3 losses and you really can't hang any of those 3 losses as like, dude, you really weren't ready to go in the cage that night, you've got the prototypical fighter on your hands. Really, when Rory came into the game, everybody was looking at him as like the baby GSP, and I think he has far and away exceeded that. I'm glad that he's still fighting in the UFC. The guy is he's freaky good. I think you would be hard pressed to find a better definition of an MMA fighter in the current era. there's nowhere you can put him in the cage that he can't come out dominant. He could probably pull butterfly guard and win a fight. There's just Roy's the man.
Well, his butterfly guard is actually quite good. I mean, we saw that against Damian Maia. So, I mean, I think you guys really covered it with Rory. I'm gonna talk about a couple things that I see from him, a couple notes about his game. He really likes to stick with the basics a lot of time with his striking, his bread and butter, his 1-2, and then he'll incorporate that back snap kick. That snap kick, he utilizes it a lot like Conor McGregor does with that spinning heel kick, where it's not necessarily supposed to land, it's how he creates that distance or judges that distance. He utilizes a really, really good stiff jab, the same way Georges St. Pierre did. And to some of the lesser fighters, you can really break someone's will. You keep on getting them like that, intercept them as they're coming in with that jab, and it can really demoralize his opponents. His kicks, he throws it with such torque, and he's able to really, really put a lot into them at different angles. We saw against Maia, he had just a beautiful roundhouse kick to the midsection that really just, Maia did not look the same after that fight. The guy's a very cerebral fighter. We saw against Tarek Saffiedine, really pressured him, was able to use Saffiedine's strength as a kicker and turn it against them. Really put Saffiedine in tough situations. We're going to move over to his opponent. Now, if you look at most fighters, they're going to look about the same when you see them fight. They're going to stand about the same. Maybe orthodox, maybe southpaw. They're going to throw jabs kind of the same way, some better than others. They're going to throw straights the same way. They're going to throw kicks the same way. I mean, this isn't blood sport. You're not going to see anybody out there with the monkey warrior style. Unless you're like John Jones, and at the beginning of fights, sometimes you crawl out there like that. I don't know if he's doing that to be cool or to intimidate people. I like to say he's trying to cool-timidate people. That's right, Robin Black. You're not the only one that can like mix up words and create gibberish and then say it's a thing. Cool-timidate. BBYK, trademarked. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson is one of those fighters that when you see him, he's going to look really different compared to all the other fighters you see. And it's really rare that you see a fighter that really makes you say something like that. I think Dominic Cruz is another one of those guys. When you see the way he shifts around a lot, you go, that doesn't look like the way other people fight. This guy is a world-class striker. He has a 57-0 record as a kickboxer, has a 12-1 record as a mixed martial artist. This guy's fighting out of pitch black MMA. He's got a 5th degree black belt in Tetsushin Ryu Kempo Karate, a black belt in Tensutsu Ryu Jiu-Jitsu, a black belt in American Kickboxing, and a purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. This guy is one of the best martial artists on the planet right now. David, tell us a little bit about Stephen Thompson, man.
I mean, it's like you said. I mean, the guy is a purebred striker, and you could argue one of the best strikers in the UFC at this point. I mean, the way he changes his stances, the way he throws his kicks and his punches, purebred striker. His karate background, I think, like you said, it's not something a lot of fighters have seen, and not something a lot of fighters have trained with. So I think that really helps him. But honestly, I think the biggest strength of his game and the thing that really allows him to excel in his striking game is his defensive wrestling. The fact that he's able to keep fights on the feet essentially as long as he wants really allows him to tee off on fighters. We saw that against Hendricks in his last fight. His defensive wrestling, I think, is one of the strongest aspects of his game, and allows him to just tee off on his opponents. And his countering game at the same time. I mean, like even if a fighter is not trying to take him down, he does an excellent job of countering his opponent's strikes and really making them pay for throwing at him.
This is really interesting because Stephen Thompson has actually trained up there with the TriStar guys. GSP has said that he may be the best kickboxer he's ever sparred with, and Faraz has said over and over again that Stephen Thompson's one of the most talented strikers in the UFC. Stephen Thompson is a world-class striker. It's very unusual. He's going to fight you with that side-on stance that is just so different than anybody else in mixed martial arts. It's really weird to fight like that because it takes away certain things that you can do, and not a lot of people can utilize the weapons that Stephen Thompson has. The ability to do what he does takes tremendous hip dexterity and flexibility. You look at the way he uses that side kick. He uses the side kick the same way most people utilize the jab. That's how he creates distance. But if you look at the way he throws it, there's no difference between his side kick, his roundhouse kick, and his hook kick. They all come up the exact same way. So it's really hard to anticipate and block these. So not only does he have a strike that's really quick, can get him out of the way, something that he can throw really quick to judge the distance, he can also throw and hit you with them. The one problem with the way he throws it, you look at Rory, this is a cockback full roundhouse traditional way. He throws a lot of torque into it and just absolutely kills you once he lands it. Thompson doesn't have a lot of torque. If you look at the way he throws it, his knees actually usually pass his opponent's center line when he actually hits them with that roundhouse. So there's not a lot of power and weight behind it. I think what we're realizing now, that accurate kicks are really, really deadly in that you don't have to really throw a lot of power behind them. One, you don't have padding on your feet the same way you have padding on your hands. Your feet weigh a lot more. The bone is really dense there. And off of a short amount of distance, you can create enough torque to knock someone out. If you go back and you look at that Ellenberger fight, that kick, it just looked like he barely grazed him. It didn't seem like there was much to it, but he rocked the crap out of Ellenberger, fell over and finished the fight. This guy, he'll use his kicks, but he's not afraid to use his hands to stand and bang as well. Likes to throw that snap kick at the midsection. You saw him use this against Johnny Hendricks and really uses the ball of his feet, really presses against it. What's really cool about the way this guy uses the snap kick is not only does he use it as a quick weapon to get you when you're standing there within kickboxing range, he actually utilizes it to reset his stance. So when a guy comes in or is in the clinch, he actually kicks off of him. It's his way to press out and get back into the distance he's comfortable at fighting. Very interesting the way he utilizes that technique. A couple things that I brought up on my previous breakdown of Johnny Hendricks and Stephen Thompson, but this guy has a killer rock back game, especially when he can anticipate a guy that likes to attack linearly. He's really good at anticipating that jab, moving out of the way, just getting just right out of that guy's range and coming back with this 1-2. This guy can fight from both stances. When he does go into attack, you'll see Stephen Thompson utilize a blitz attack. And when he goes and he blitzes, he actually likes to shift. So you're going to see him move his feet going into that position. When he's off that southpaw stance, which he stands traditionally, he's going to fire that 1-2. When he goes back to that orthodox, he really likes to fire that straight down the line. Different combinations for his different stances. This guy is a complete martial artist. On the ground, this guy is, well, he likes to avoid it. We don't know how good he is on the ground. We know that he really worked on it since Matt Brown. But I think what's really interesting about this fight is we can sort of say this is a fight between modern MMA, Rory MacDonald from the ground up, a mixed martial artist, versus traditional MMA, a guy that's really disciplined under one thing and really, really elite level at it. A new versus old school fight. I don't think that's fair to say because I actually think Stephen Thompson is an evolution in that elite striker. You've had wrestlers be able to dominate the game for so long because they can dictate where that fight goes. But if you can have a striker that can keep the fight standing, avoid those takedowns. We saw against Johnny Hendricks, who's a very, very good wrestler, just taken completely out of his game by Stephen Thompson. I'm surprised by how many people, I know the odds are in Rory's favor for this fight, but I'm surprised by how many people are picking Stephen Thompson. I think this is a combination. Stephen Thompson seems to me to be the flavor of the month welterweight. He's the guy with the cool, flashy style, and people really like his game, and he's a good guy, and he drives kids to karate class, and man, you watch his interviews, and you're like, oh, you'd be anyone's friend.
He's like the Southern GSP.
Yeah, he's such a nice guy. I think if this guy ever becomes champion, he'd be just a hell of a champion, just a really good person, a good spokesman for the sport. Rory, on the other hand, kind of comes off a little psychotic at times. It's a little awkward. Even in his interviews, he's always like looking off different places. He seems genuinely to be a good person and really, really enjoys fighting. I think this is going to be just an excellent, excellent fight. Tyler, I'm going to start with you on this one. Who do you think wins, and how are they going to win?
I think Rory wins the fight. I think it does go to ground, and he's gonna have to wear him down. So it'll be later in the fight. I don't know if it'll be round 2, round 3. Is this one of those crazy ones where they're gonna go 5 rounds without a belt?
It's always 5 rounds on the last fight of the main card.
Okay. So I don't even know if it's gonna go that far though. I think Rory can pick this up within 3 on the ground.
All right, nice and sweet. Like it, David.
I am also going to go Rory here. I guess not a huge surprise to those that know me. Against a striker like a Wonderboy Thompson, Rory is not going to want to stay at range, though. I mean, he's going to have to push the fight against the cage and negate Thompson's power and movement. And against the cage, I think this, I mean, like I said earlier, it's where Rory can really turn on, throw those flurries. And then Tyler, as you said, if it goes to the ground, and I would not be surprised if it does, then yeah, it's definitely Rory's fight to win. I mean, he has vicious ground and pound. So yeah, I think it's all about Rory closing that distance and negating Wonderboy's movement, striking, and power.
For all the reasons you guys already mentioned, there's a lot to love about a Rory MacDonald, and there's a reason why a lot of people are talking about this guy as a future champion. But I'm going to go contrarian here. I'm going to go with Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. I'm going to talk about a couple issues I have with Rory first, and then I'm going to get into some of the technical aspects and why I think Stephen Thompson will win this fight. First, Rory has an impending free agency coming up. So there's a bit more pressure on him to win this fight, to have some leverage going into those negotiations. That pressure isn't necessarily on Stephen Thompson. He can go out there and maybe fight a little bit more freely. The second thing is, yeah, Rory is relatively young at 26, but he's got a lot of miles on his body. He's been through a lot of fights, and he's been dealing with a lot of injuries over the years. He's been dealing with knee injuries, back injuries. In fact, he still has back issues. They brought this up on the Fight Network, but you see him employ more of a crouch stance lately, and a lot of that has to do with a lot of the back injuries he's sustained over the years. Yeah, he's young, but he's kind of in his prime now. I don't think this is going to be the kind of fighter, especially when he goes through some of the wars that he does. This is not going to be the kind of guy that really reaches his prime in his 30s. I think this is it now, and you could see him fading pretty quickly, especially if he goes through fights like the one he went through with Lawler. Which brings me to my last point. That fight with Lawler, it was an epic war, but that takes something out of you. Part of it is he has to prove it to me. He has to prove that he can come back and be the same Rory MacDonald after that fight. I mean, that was just a brutal beatdown. If you were able to see some of the footage afterwards, you just saw a fighter collapse from exhaustion. It wasn't a one-hitter quitter where he was knocked down, knocked out. It was just an accumulation of damage through the course of a fight. We've seen fighters like Gray Maynard after his fight with Frankie. We've seen it happen to guys like Josh Koscheck after his fight with George St. Pierre, fighters that just clearly weren't the same after they came back. He said it himself that fight, Lawler took him to a dark place. Now, I think he meant that as a positive, like he found something out about himself, and that's great. And as a Rory fan, I really hope he comes back stronger than ever, but he's got to prove it to me first. I mean, that's tough. That was a tough beatdown. A cracked nose, broken orbital bone, that's something that other people will have in the back of their mind when they get punched in the face again. Is Rory going to be able to deal with that? Now I'm going to go into some of the more technical aspects of the fight. You know, you guys brought up a lot of Rory's strengths, and I will counter that a lot of his strengths aren't going to be as great of an asset against a fighter like Stephen Thompson. I'm going to start with the size advantage and just his overall athleticism, his ability to sort of bully other people in that welterweight division. He's a big guy in that weight class. Let's look at some of the other guys he's fought against, though. Diaz, who's moving up with 155. BJ Penn, who's a 155 lifer. Ellenberger, Woodley. Some of these guys, they're shorter and they have substantially shorter reach. He's had the size advantage over virtually every single one of his opponents. Tyler, you listed off he's only lost 3 times. Well, these were the only 3 that were around his same size. Stephen Thompson at 6 foot with a 75-inch reach will be the same size. When you talk about how athletic Rory is, Stephen Thompson is every bit just as athletic. Just look at the way he's able to throw his kicks. Just look at the way he celebrates when he does those crazy flips. The guy is insanely athletic himself. So this is going to be one of those fights where Rory will be fighting an equal in terms of size and athleticism. So that won't be as much of a strength for him. Next off, we pointed out this guy has a phenomenal stiff jab, just like George St. Pierre before him, and it can really, really demoralize opponents. It's that intercepting fist concept where he just constantly stops your forward momentum with that stiff jab. That really is negated by the southpaw stance. We saw this against Robbie Lawler, who constantly checked and parried that jab. In that first fight, when he took that away from Rory, Rory really didn't have an answer. In the second fight, Rory was able to do other things, but you're still talking about being able to take away one of his great weapons, that stiff jab. And for Thompson, he actually likes it when you throw that jab. For him, when you throw that jab, it allows him to judge the distance. So when you throw that jab and it's in close, well, Stephen Thompson will throw that snap kick, which allows him to back away really quickly, have an escape route, angle out. If you throw that jab and it shows that it's within range for one of his head kicks, then bam, he's going to throw that side kick. Just really quick technique. Rory's a phenomenal wrestler, especially his offensive wrestling, and he possesses some absolutely deadly ground and pound. But how does he utilize that stuff? You guys just said that you'll see the fight on the ground. Well, how's that going to happen? I'll tell you how it's going to happen. It's going to happen with a takedown. Rory employs some really great open mat takedowns, your singles, your doubles, your trips. Those won't work against a guy like Stephen Thompson. With a guy like Rory, he doesn't explode on you the same way, say, George St. Pierre used to just blast through people with a double leg. He uses great sense of timing to just really level change and take advantage of either a mistake or capitalize when you overextend. Again, these aren't things that are going to happen against Stephen Thompson. In fact, Stephen Thompson, he's going to welcome these takedowns. That side-on stance, it really sells the illusion that that single leg is there all day. But it's really not. It's not the same way as a traditional stance. And as soon as Rory goes for it, he's really going to be able to angle out and crack him with something. Dave, it doesn't matter if you double up on your adjectives. Yeah, he may have vicious ground and pound, but it won't matter if Stephen Thompson negates the takedown to get him there. Rory, he is an aggressive fighter, a pressure style fighter. And if you look at that Tarek Saffiedine fight, you may see the blueprint on how a Rory MacDonald can defeat a kickboxer. When you are aggressive and you're constantly moving forward, it really disrupts a kickboxer's management of distance and their timing, and they can't throw off the kicks the way they want to. But Saffiedine is no Stephen Thompson. Saffiedine's game plan was to avoid the takedown. He didn't want to go on, get into a ground fight with Rory. Rory would obviously have the advantage there. For whatever reason, he kept on finishing combinations with leg kicks and threw these roundhouses at the body, which were easy to catch, and Rory's really good at that. Stephen Thompson, he likes to snap kick or throw side-on kicks. These are harder to catch. So really, in this fight, Rory's pressure style may work against him a little bit. He's going to keep moving forward, and this is exactly what Stephen Thompson wants him to do. He's going to keep backing up, keep that distance, and as Rory moves forward, kick him with shots that's safe, quick, and can get him out of the way. And he's going to be okay with winning points like that. And that will give Rory two options. Either continue to move forward and take shots, or really try to blitz and bull rush, and that's when Thompson can really capitalize and plant and then throw his counter. You know, we're talking about that Tarek Saffiedine fight, and this is something I wanted to bring up as I get into my next point, which is Rory striking, which is really good, but it's a very fundamental game. He sticks with a very basic 1-2. Sometimes he finishes up with that snap kick, but he throws a lot of the same combos, and Stephen Thompson has pointed this out in interviews. Rory throws a lot of the same combos. Now, some of these are quite beautiful. The one that he used to finish Tarek Saffiedine really cool stuff. He throws that overhand, and most fighters, they use that overhand as a kill shot, and it's a finishing blow. You set it up with something quick, you throw that overhand. He actually throws that overhand to get the opponent to move off the center line, and then he cracks him with that lead uppercut. That's how he iced Saffiedine. And the other thing that Rory does really well is he incorporates those kicks. You really saw against Robbie Lawler when he was just throwing the 1-2, trying to like mix it up with boxing. He was losing a lot of those exchanges, but then when he started incorporating some of those kicks, he really was able to back Lawler up. And the difference here is the way Rory throws his kicks versus the way Stephen Thompson throws his kicks. Rory likes to throw those roundhouses. It's a wider shot. It's not to say that Stephen Thompson is a faster fighter than Rory or a faster kicker, but the technique he employs is a faster technique. It takes less time to throw. So you can have a wide roundhouse kick by Rory, and it's going to be intercepted every single time by a straight shot down the middle, side kick by Stephen Thompson. So he's going to win these kicking exchanges, and that was something that Rory has used in the past to much success. We saw against Damian Maia, he used the roundhouse to the body to really rock him, hurt him, and that was when the fight really turned in his favor. Against Robbie Lawler, we saw him throw that same roundhouse, but this time to the head, really rocked Lawler and got him back against the fence, which is exactly where Rory loves to fight. Which brings me to my last point, the clinch. Both you guys brought this up. This is that tri-star method. Push him up against the fence, tire out his arms. That's something that Rory is going to want to do against Stephen Thompson. Here's the thing. I've seen Johnny Hendricks hold Lawler against a cage for 4 minutes, and Lawler couldn't get out of it. I saw him do the same thing to Stephen Thompson. Stephen Thompson got out of it in 5 seconds. There's a difference. There's a difference when you get into that position and you're seeing what you can do offensively versus once you get into that position, you're already in steps 4 and 5 on how to evade and escape. And that's how Stephen Thompson fights. His defensive grappling is very underrated. He's gotten much better over the years in this department. And you know for a fact he's not going to want to engage in these exchanges with Rory. So he's going to be constantly moving, which means Rory's going to have to open himself up a little bit and take some risks to be able to even get into these positions. And that's when Stephen Thompson's really going to capitalize with a combination of his really quick kicks and then transition into those deadly blitzes. For Rory and how he's able to get people against the fence or into the clinch so often, a lot of that has to do with his opponents. I mean, let's look at these guys. These guys want to fight in close, which allows them to not have to close that distance and figure out a way to get it there. A lot of these fighters are already willingly in the pocket because one, maybe they were shorter and they had to get there in the first place to even do any damage, or some of them are just more comfortable fighting there, like a Robbie Lawler. You look at some of these guys. I just mentioned them. Lawler wants to fight in the pocket. Woodley wants to fight in the pocket. Ellenberger, Penn, Maia wanted to get in close for that takedown and take the fight to the ground. I mean, most of the fighters that he's gone against, they don't like to fight from distance. They want to get in close, which makes it much easier for Rory to then transition that into a clinch game and then use his strength to really bully them and pressure them against the cage. Another thing I want to point out about Rory, a really cool technique, but sometimes he likes to fake that overhand and then transition into a step-in elbow. Really cool. The guys bring up anticipating this wide shot, and he just cracks him right down the middle, and then he transitions that into a clinch and then presses guys up against the cage. A very cool technique, again, that I don't think will work against Stephen Thompson, because Stephen Thompson won't be in that range where an overhand would necessarily work to begin with, so he won't be reacting to it the same way. As difficult of a task as it is for Stephen Thompson, and this is a difficult task for him, Rory is a beast. But Rory's never fought a guy like Stephen Thompson before. He's never fought a guy that really likes to fight from the outside and then work his way in through blitzes. If he beats Stephen Thompson, if he's able to take this fight to the ground or grind him up against the cage, he will be doing so playing Stephen Thompson's game and just beating him at it, which will show incredible resilience and heart. The way I see it, a lot of Rory's strengths will be negated by Stephen Thompson's strengths. So I like this fight for Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. Alright, now to everyone's favorite segment, rattling the cage. Let's go, Matt.
If Robbie Lawler is Shang Tsung, then Overeem is Goro. The Diaz brothers can be Scorpion and Sub-Zero, with Luke Rockhold as Johnny Cage. Alex Caceres performed The Lazy Song and Locked Out of Heaven after his win at UFC 199. Ariel Helwani sang along too loudly. That's why he was kicked out of the venue. Brock Lesnar is getting a USADA exemption for UFC 200. They decided that if Mark Hunt can have Spam, Brock should be able to have steroids. Jose Aldo's movie just came out. I'm waiting for its Netflix release. I don't want to pay full price for another 13-second disappointment. Sage Northcutt's dad is apparently the worst coach ever, according to Sage's kickboxing sparring partner. This leads me to believe that Edmund Tarverdian is less commonly known than I had thought. Eddie Alvarez says he wants RDA to punch him clean and hard. See, fans, MMA isn't just about sadism, it's also about masochism. Regarding Conor McGregor and Holly Holm's submission lawsuits, Renzo Gracie said it is more honorable not to tap. One way to achieve this is to avoid grappling with Nate Diaz. And I'm spent.
Guys, closing thoughts.
Closing thoughts. All right. Rory, Wonderboy, Aries, Red King.
Waterboy.
Sorry. Man, that was a slip. If Roy Waterboy, Aries, Red King wins, if he beats Wonderboy, you owe me a beer.
Tyler, you have any last thoughts for our listeners?
Yeah, chalk Canada. Every Canadian fighter is going to win. Canada's the best. Go Canada. Go Canada.
Wow. The always surprising Tyler Burrito Dolinger. Guys, if you like this episode, just a side note I wanted to bring up to you guys and for our listeners out there, but this is something that I've been thinking about, and it's like, most curious. Cain Velasquez, Chris Weidman, Rafael Dos Anjos, Full Fight Camp, injured, Stipe Miocic, Michael Bisping, Nate Diaz. 2 of those on short notice. Do we have to rethink some things when it comes to these camps and putting more of an emphasis on fighter safety? We'll be discussing that in future episodes. Also, on our next episode, we'll be talking with top 15 UFC flyweight Ben Nguyen. He'll be taking on Smoke, that Fight Night Ferguson versus Chiesa card on July 13th. Really looking forward to speaking with Ben. David, thanks for being on the show. You always bring your brilliant insight. And guys, I have to tell you, I didn't mention this earlier, but David had his notes today. He was prepared, and he was correcting typos on stuff that he had already said. Like this is stuff that like he's gonna throw away. He didn't need it, but he went back and he corrected it. So maybe we should call him David OCD Bridges instead of Daisy BC Bridges. And Tyler, my good friend Tyler, the Canadian, Mr. Burrito. Thank you for coming onto our show, my friend.
I appreciate it.
All right, bros. That was David and Tyler. I'm Viet, telling you to enjoy the fights. And until next time, we are the Broest Bros, you knows.
It feels so special.